Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we assemble to explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our 6th season, we are looking at the Avengers. I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Real Film Podcast.
And I'm Pete Wright. Dramatic line, dramatic line, dramatic line. Takes drink.
There it is. Today we're talking about Minute 102, which begins with pinning the blame for everything to Loki and ends with the Mark 7 attaching itself to Tony. Joining us on the show today, we have film critic Ewan Graf from the Quiet on Set podcast. Hello, Ewan.
Hey, guys.
Yay!
We're thrilled to have you joining us for the next 4 minutes, and then you'll be back in a few weeks. So my first question for you, since we are talking starting today through the end of the week, basically, I mean, why did you pick this section of the film to talk about?
Well, I don't want to spoil, I guess, the upcoming minutes yet. Is this something that's allowed on the show?
It is allowed.
Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah, we'll allow it.
Spoiling the Avengers in 2023. But no, I think it just encapsulates really what works well about this movie, that it has like these kind of raunchy jokes as well that land for an older audience, but it's just also very hype to see it all come together. And I feel like in these couple of minutes, we get the best of that, in my opinion. And especially where we start off right at the get-go with Loki confronting Tony Stark. I think that's very well put together little moment there.
Yeah, this is, we are at this point. Tony has poured himself a drink, and now it's this confrontation between the two of them. I mean, we've kind of seen that there was an ulterior motive for Tony to go through this. You know, he did manage to get his bracelets on that are part of the Mark 7 suit, and we'll see that play out later in this minute. But really, I mean, we're at this point where he and Loki are having this confrontation here. And Loki has just kind of made his threat, and Tony comes back with his line, if we can't protect the Earth, you can be damn well sure we'll avenge it. Which, in a movie called The Avengers, I suppose we're waiting for somebody to say something like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It sort of gets a pass that they didn't use the actual title, like, will be the Avengers for it. Like, I'll give it a pass. That's one of my huge pet peeves, is using the name of a movie in the movie. But this is perilously close to being stupid. Perilously close.
Well, but I mean, it's the name of the group, and, he did say it a little bit ago. But I mean, I suppose when it's the name, it's less of a problem, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's the name of the group.
I mean, it's like in a movie called Iron Man. Is it weird when they say Iron Man? I mean, no.
We've just talked about that not 5 years ago, but the first movie that I went to is a movie we've never talked about, The Commitments. Like, why would The Commitments? I think Robert Downey Jr. should have been in an Irish R&B band. The thing is that he is so peak Tony Stark here that I just, like, how can you not love this exchange between Loki and Tony? He is so cool in the face of, green leather-clad god with the weirdo horns. Like, he's so cool. And they have a funny moment when Loki tries to scepter him and mind control him. And it plays as a joke. Just don't stop and think about it. Why does he keep poking the center of his chest? Can't he move the scepter a little bit? I don't know. But I love the beat a lot.
But here's a question. So jumping back a bit, because I definitely want to talk about the chest tap. If we can't protect the Earth, you can be damn well sure we'll avenge it. Does that mean, like, if the Earth's destroyed, like, what exactly is he saying here?
Well,
does it make sense?
No, I don't think destroyed is implied. Is destroyed implied? I think if the Earth
is it taken over?
Yeah, I'm going to go with taken over.
Yeah,
because that's what Loki doesn't want to destroy the Earth, right? He just wants to rule it,
and he's killing a bunch of people as he comes in, and maybe that's also, it could also be taken as avenge what you've already done to us, I guess, more liberally. But I agree. It's a very silly line that doesn't really make that much sense other than to work the title in somehow.
Right. That's exactly what they're trying to do here.
Yeah.
It's one of those moments. But, I mean, it's all about this army of his that, I mean, they're talking about the Chitauri. And again, they needed to get the Chitauri in. And we'll see the Chitauri soon enough. But, it's these constant reminders that there is this army and they may come. And this whole idea that we are going to fight against you. And that's kind of where Tony leaves things. And I suppose in the scope of Tony trying to come back at Loki with something, I suppose this works. And then I guess it leaves Loki, the only place he can go next is the old mind control attempt.
Yeah. Well, and so I think there one more piece on the Tony thing is I think this is the first time Tony says, like, by him saying avenge it is sort of his out loud in the open to the audience commitment that he's an Avenger. Right? Like, he has had a rough time being a part of the team. And this is his chance to say, okay, we're going to avenge it, and I'm part of the we, and I'm on team Avengers. So that's a good thing. This is the moment, and it's played in great Tony fashion as part of a joke. So yes, chest tap.
Plus he drinks.
And he drinks,
too, which
yes.
is very Tony also.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you clearly saw him react quite viscerally. Sorry, took a few times to get that out there. When Coulson dies, right? His death. So I feel like that could also be where you bring that avenge theme in there that he brings up in that line. And that's like what I think what pushes him over the line from all of the people assembled in the Avengers. I think he needs probably to push the most. So it kind of makes sense that he says that there. In a way, you have to string it together, but yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, they all take their own little elements to kind of push them over the edge. For Steve, it definitely seemed to be the bloody trading cards. For Hulk, honestly, I mean, this was something that we talked about in previous minutes, but it's kind of, unfortunately, the deleted or the extended, scene between him and the security guard, Harry Dean Stanton, about like why he's afraid to get involved in it. And it's a shame that extended bit got cut, because it certainly gave us more of an understanding as to the kind of the internal conflict that Bruce was having there. But yeah, it's interesting. They've each kind of had their moments, and again, we're kind of through the bottom of the second act, and we're really kind of pushing things into the third act here with this initial confrontation. And, it plays okay. And then again, it does lead us to this chest tap, this comedic beat. It's supposed to be Loki showing what he can do with the scepter. And of course, when he taps Tony on the chest, he hits him right on his arc reactor, and you get that lovely little tink, which, it is kind of funny sound to play. And it's a great, again, Pete, this is kind of the way that this director plays the sort of intense moment, shifted very quickly to a comedy beat, because like the same thing we had with Black Widow when she got the phone call. It's very much that turn on a dime. Let's shift the tone of this scene and take something dramatic and increase the comedy by shifting it to a comedic beat.
Yes, absolutely. And I feel like it works for me, again, because it is a comedic beat. And I love the way both of their heads turn down and look at the staff, the scepter, that it's not working. And we get the performance issues line. Performance issues, always funny in a movie, right? Are performance issues always funny in a movie?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, sure. Probably.
Yeah. Tony's not wrong with his response. Sexual performance issues, 9 to 25% in men over the age of 40, and 6 to 16% of women affected over the age of 40.
Of course you know that, because
I did, that's part of the job, is doing the research on all these
part of the
things.
Job. Wink.
1 in 5.
Sure.
I will say, though, does this feel a little bit like a wasted moment? I mean, sure, we have the comedic beat here and everything, but I don't know. I felt like there could have been something interesting in having him tap Tony anywhere else, and have the answer be like perhaps the arc reactor blocks its power or something. I just don't know if it does. I don't know. Does it end up seeing like it's making Loki less smart by the fact that he's trying to tap in this exact spot both times?
I was actually thinking about that, because it feels like so many of these moments for Loki are actually positioning him to look more and more stupid as the movie goes on, all the way up to the Hulk exchange later.
Yeah.
It feels like they're minimizing, and I don't know if that's a character choice or just we're going to the battle and we need to see him start to lose at some point, and he starts by losing his character and not just the battle when the Chitauri are introduced. I don't know, but it does feel like they're making him seem like an idiot.
I think it's also the start of the Chitauri becoming the main antagonist. Not the main antagonist, but like the thing they have to go up against. They have to fight. And Loki stays pretty much in one-on-one battles mostly for the rest of it. And I think that is definitely something there. But I think the scepter is from the start, I guess, you have to tap it to the core. Again, I guess with the logic they set up, at least they're consistent that he doesn't tap Coulson or anyone else. He mind controls in a different place. But yeah, there's the potential to have, like, I guess maybe a part of Iron Man's suit come out and block it in a sense or something like that.
Yeah, it is kind of a frustrating thing. And I mean, you're absolutely right. Like, from this point forward, Loki is the antagonist of the film, but really he becomes the side character. And it's a weird shift that I've never really been a big fan of with this film. And one of the issues I have is because it's like, he's the villain. I want to see him really kind of be the villain of the film. And he is kind of like, once the Chitauri invasion starts, which we're about to get into, he's kind of left by the wayside. And sure, he gets to ride around and do stuff and everything, but he just doesn't seem like he's the villain. He's just kind of like the guy who people keep having confrontations with up here in the penthouse. To that end, I don't know. I feel like I want a little bit more of him as the primary antagonist. And it does feel like they're trying to find ways to just kind of diminish him in these comedic beats from this point forward. I guess we'll have to kind of keep our eye on this conversation about Loki as we continue. Well, Ewan, just out of curiosity, like, what did you think of him as the villain in Thor in the previous outing that we had with him?
Oh God, that was such a long time ago that I saw the first Thor. But I enjoyed him right from the start. I think he's a great character, and where he continues to go, I think he's one of the more malleable characters that you got out of the MCU. But I agree a lot with, like, his lack of focus towards the end there, because essentially he comes in to take over the Earth, to rule it. But what he ends up doing is just like bring a bunch of enemies in and then just fight. But there's nothing about like him ruling. Like, that goal is kind of really is sidelined quite a bit. But I like him as a character. Like, yeah, all of the beats. I think he can go into the more serious notes, the very comedic notes, but then also playing the line of not really knowing what he's actually up to. The God of Mischief. He earns that title multiple times throughout the entire MCU.
Yeah, I think that really boils down to Tom Hiddleston, who I think has really connected so much with this character and just brings so much life to him. I really enjoy watching him do it. Mm. And we get a little, sample of his strength in this point as, one of the frost giants / Asgardians that he is, as he kind of grabs and tosses Tony, which is a great way to kind of interrupt Tony's joke about performance issues, but also gives us that little shift that we have as things are going to go forward. This is Loki kind of shifting and going back to his kneel before Zod mentality, I suppose, with you all fall before me, but also it really plays with that idea of kind of the Tony tech. And that's really what we're going to get with the rest of this minute as things shift to the Tony tech and how there is this kind of fun, I suppose they're almost starting this trope of Tony tech that seems to be delayed, but it does get there in the end, as we have the Mark 7's not quite ready, but it's going to get ready pretty quick in time for Tony to get it just in the nick of time.
Yeah, the fact that they give you a hint in this minute of the door opening, right, for the launch of the Tony Tech, and I think that's cool. And the thing that I get hung up on is, of course, I always stop and think, why is Tony still alive? Like, isn't the suit actually chasing just a skin suit filled with jelly at this point after being thrown so aggressively by his neck through that giant panel of safety glass.
I don't know. We have to watch the next minute. I don't know if he makes it on the line.
We may not. Right. You're right. It may be just jelly. It may be just Iron Man jelly. Of course, I don't know. I shouldn't do this kind of stuff, but there are a lot of glass makers who looking for the elusive brass ring of more content have written quite extensively about what would happen if somebody fell through their bit of safety glass. And I like this comment. There are individuals who have accidentally fallen through windows without sustaining serious injuries. There are also people who've survived the Ebola virus. However, in both cases, the odds are not particularly good. I think the outcome of Tony hitting this glass with that amount of force probably would make him look not dissimilar from an Ebola casualty. It's not pretty.
Jeez.
I know, gross, right?
No.
So gross.
The Mark 7. So we're gonna get to the Mark 7 in just a sec, but it is kind of fun. Tony gets tossed out, tumbles end over end a few times, and then just like a pro skydiver knows how to move his body just the right way so that he can kind of position himself to be falling straight down horizontally with his arms and legs spread out to kind of slow the fall ever so much. But the Mark 7 does burst out. I just don't fully understand. So the door behind which it's resting are opening. But did the doors get stuck? I couldn't figure out exactly what happens, but the Mark 7 blasts through the doors instead of waiting for them to continue opening. Was that just Jarvis rushing it because he knew Tony needed it?
That Jarvis is somehow not connected to the door, but is to the launch of the suit mechanism?
Yeah, I couldn't quite figure out why it decides to just, it's going to go through the door because the door is taking too long.
It does, you're right. It just explodes through, it destroys a bit of his office in his fancy building.
Yeah, and it's a peculiar thing.
That doesn't seem smart.
And it does look like it actually nails Loki right in the head. In the scope of things, I don't know. I suppose he's already been hit by a bullet and seemed to be fine, so getting hit by this thing...
It's not even in the head. It's like in the face. Like he takes it right in the face because he turns around and looks at it, right?
That's right. And it knocks him right over. Yeah. So let's talk about this Mark 7 a little bit. The package design, I thought it was interesting. They did a reverse engineering. They wanted it to be kind of this pod shape. And they used, I don't know if it was the same thing that they used, like the team behind the Transformers films used, but they used Luxology Moto to reverse engineer. And that's something where you can say, this is what we want it to look like in the end, the suit that Tony's going to be in. How do we reverse engineer this, break it into pieces so that it can squeeze down to this pod? It's pretty cool the way that this whole thing works out. You have the chest plate that forms the top. The thrusters from the boots are the bottom, and that propels it like a rocket. But I wasn't sure why they needed to have some of those, the shield plates like blow off of it. They said that they were trying to treat it like an ICBM where those plates pop off of it. But I was like, why would you have those on it and not just have them be parts that are worn? I don't know. Regardless, this thing shoots out like a rocket and chases Tony down, opening up. And now we get to see the seventh version of a suit for Tony to be wearing. We're not going to get to finish it. We'll get to kind of talk about the finished version of it tomorrow. But, I mean, let's talk a little bit about this pod, the way it attaches to Tony, the return to the circular unibeam. You know, Ewan, were you a fan of Iron Man and kind of the different iterations of him in the films?
Yeah, I've liked him. I think the first one is still a really, really solid film in the MCU, a great starting off point. And it's fun to see like the different iterations of the suit as it evolves, and it evolves so much in the later films as well. And yeah, I think here it's a great design. It does the job of like, you know, it propels this little capsule thing into Loki's head, and then it can expand in a fun Transformer-like way. And it somehow makes it kind of believable that this is something that could kind of happen, which I can't say the same about like the later Avengers films when, you know, it gets like crazier and crazier with the suit design. So I like this. This obviously is not grounded, but you know, as he flies to the ground, it's the closest we'll get to something grounded, I think.
Well, I think that's really a great point. The fact that this is kind of the last really grounded suit that we get, and we see it I think how many movies do we stick with this one? Like we stick with this one for kind of a long time. It shows up, right?
The Mark 7, that's a great question. I am looking right now. We see it in
Iron Man 3.
This film,
for sure.
Iron Man 3. I think
is this the Civil War film suit too? Because he doesn't. The next time he gets a new suit is it?
Well, Iron Man
Endgame?
3. Remember, he's got a ton of other
he's got all the
suits that show up.
Maybe
Civil
that's what
War. It says that they just have footage of him in this, but I don't necessarily think that's the one that he's actually wearing for the bulk of the film.
But the next...
okay, Civil War, he's wearing, let's see, that would be 10, 15, 16, he's wearing 46. He's wearing Mark 46.
Mark 46, of course he is. Okay, there. But when does it, and it goes, the first time we're introduced to the nano suit is Endgame.
That's
whichever
possible.
The first one was. Yeah, well, that's it. We don't need to litigate this that far down. But it is interesting to me that this is a suit we get for a little while.
Yeah,
it goes from like the sensor that it needs to connect to on his wrists to the whole suit being in the wrist.
Yeah,
is, as a wristband, which is quite a fancy wristband.
Well, they're interesting. The wristbands, these little bracelets that he's wearing are, I think, for this particular suit, just used as the connecting tools, like to track Tony. So it's finding him with these bracelets and then knowing, okay, these are your arms. Okay, then we're going to attach here. And it's probably the closest in design to the Mark V, the briefcase suit.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think this one is pretty cool, and I like the way that it feels bulkier than the briefcase suit, which felt very light, which was, I guess, part of the point there.
Yeah, that really felt like the travel suit. This feels like a legit suit, right? This feels like legit Iron Man armor. That never really did to me, the briefcase suit.
Yeah.
That felt like a break glass in case of emergency suit.
Exactly. Right. Something that he could take when needed because it fit into a briefcase, so that was kind of fun. The whole look of this one is nice, and I do like that we're returning to the circular aperture on his chest. I guess I didn't really mind the triangle one so much. In fact, I think it looks pretty cool. I think this one is a nice suit.
It's a classic
overall.
It's a classic, and as like it just makes me go back to some of our initial like Iron Man discussion, like just the way that the arc reactor ended up looking in his chest, and the way the wires, it was just a little bit rugged, and now it looks practically steampunk by comparison to all of the modern stuff. I think it looks just great. I like the throwback.
I like how it evolves as well in the sense that like later on we get the suits that are more easily replaceable, and they seem to be a bit leaner on him as well, and these are really just more bulky. And I think it also kind of represents where Tony Stark is at this moment, where he feels strong, and he like if he gets punched, he wants to be safe from it in a sense. And then later on, he's like that being afraid of the threat from outside comes in more and more, and it's more about him adapting and healing over and over again. And the suits later on reflect that a bit more, where they're just broken down and then they kind of form back together. And I feel like if something breaks here, it's broken. And later on, he's building them in a different way.
Yeah, it's really that nanotech that it just changes things so much. And while cool, there's something about it that doesn't feel as present, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, we are mid-fall. The Mark 7 is attaching itself to Tony. I think this is a good place to stop. We can finish our conversation about this tomorrow and talk more about the final look of the suit in tomorrow's Minute. So, Ewan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Tell everybody about your podcast and where they can tune in.
They can find us on YouTube. We currently probably done by the time this minute comes out with our coverage from the Cannes Film Festival. So lots of movies we get to see there. So you can go check that out. And we cover new movies each week.
Fantastic. Well, we'll have the link for the Quiet on Set podcast, which you do with Lachlan, who was a guest with us a few weeks ago.
Yes.
And so we'll have links in the show notes. Check that out, everybody. And if you're not seeing the show notes in your podcatcher, just go to our website, marvelmovieminute.com, and you can find everything there. So that's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow with Minute 103. So, Pete, thanks as always.
Tomorrow, Andy, we get to find out, is he jelly?
Until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Message to the World by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm. If your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.